Hey guys, Sean Pruitt here. I wanted to give you a brief update on what's going on in our world here. So I wanted to show the Llama prospect, the wells that we just drilled in relation to the state. And I'm going to be talking about our latest project as well. So if you're a current investor or if you're a potential new investor, this will give you a very brief overview, an update on what we're doing and how you can get involved. And so here's the Llama. And as you can see here, this is Oklahoma, north of Texas here. And we're kind of in the northeast region here in Creek County. And so our geologist, Kim, has drilled over roughly 57, 58 wells out here in this county, and he's hit 90% of them. And so the reason why his track record is so flawless out here is quite simply he does a lot of legwork, a lot of studying. He studies every well in his field, and he knows the best locations. And so the Llama prospect here was our most recent success, most recent Kim Drew success, and we drilled 2 wells in this area right here. Okay, now here's a few pictures and videos from the updates my partner Dennis Bass sent me. Here's a dozer. This is a dozer pushing the workover rig. As you can see here, the location on the Llama lease is very soft because it's been raining. And here's another. It's another video of a dozer pulling a semi truck out here. And so we've got several pictures here of the well actually being drilled. I believe this is the completion crew out there. But this is the geologist. He puts this under fluorescent lights, and if he sees yellow, that's a great sign. This is the wireline log. It prints as it's being drilled, being logged there. And so I want to go over the drilling report here. If you look here, so these are the zones that we encountered here in this well. Now, this is great news. Okay, when you see something like this, I've gotten drilling reports where you don't have a list of potential zones. You have nada. You have nothing. And so this is a success. We're very excited about this. And so the Skinner Sandstone starts at 2102 and ends at 2133. And if you subtract 2102 from 2133, it's roughly 30. It's roughly 30 something feet. So that's how you get how thick the pay zone is. So we've got Upper Red Fork Sandstone, we've got Upper Gilcrease Sandstone, Lower Gilcrease, Union Valley, and Viola Limestone. Okay, and so it's great news. The well has several zones that he's very excited about. And you know, he's got a great report here. He went into detail. Each zone, he goes in the detail explaining why he likes it and why he believes that we're going to make an incredible producible well for the next 20, 30 years. And so here he gives a little, if you read through it, it's a very interesting read, but if you're not a geologist, you're not going to really understand what he's saying. Bottom line, it's a success. Okay. And so I wanted to talk about the Buffalo Ridge in relation to the Llama prospect. The Buffalo Ridge is about 6 miles from here to here, maybe a little less. Okay. The Buffalo Ridge, he's got extensive amount of mapping of the Buffalo Ridge. He's done a lot of legwork in this area. If you look here now, you could barely see each little circle here is a well bore, and you can't see it because there's just so many of them. Let's see if we can zoom out here, and that's a portion of the map. So he studied all of these wells that are highlighted here. If I zoom in, it's not a very good image, but if you zoom in here, they're all highlighted. He's worked on it. Okay, now this is the location of our where we're going to be drilling 3 wells in the Buffalo Ridge area. Okay, now with that said, we had a very similar book to the Llama prospect, and it was a success. So I expect the same results out here. So bottom line, and now this is the geology report. After he studied the field, he wrote this. And so before modern hydraulic fracturing, which is fracking, in the early days of exploration, only very clean, very porous traditional sand reservoirs were capable of producing oil and gas in commercial quantities. So in other words, not every well that they drilled was a success. because they didn't have the ability to frack. Okay, fracking opens up the formation to where it doesn't matter if the permeability or porosity is low, because back then it had to be the perfect situation, the perfect storm in order to produce oil. Okay, now you could take a well that was unproducible during that time, and now we could extract oil out of it. Or we could go back into an old well bore that they only produced a few percent of the oil in place and produce an additional 20 to 30%. It's beautiful. Or we could take a well that is only producing 3 barrels a day without a frac and make that thing do 100. And so that's the beauty of today's technology. I'm going to move on here. So he's saying here that the estimates range from 70 to 90% of the oil is still left behind in the formation, unable to flow to the well bores and pumped out. That's quite simply because they didn't have the tech back then, and so they left it behind. The new twist on these old oil fields was started by Emerald Oil Company. They drilled their Griffith number 2 well. This well was located up dip from a large old Skinner field in the area of shellier, less porous sand deposition. So they went into an area that they wouldn't have drilled back in the 20s, 30s, or 40s or whatever, because they didn't find success out there. Okay, and so the in spite of having good samples, the electric logs did not look promising. So the log reports, the electric logs did not look good. Based on the sample shows alone, they set easing and fracture treated the Skinner sand with a new crosslink. The well came on at 65 barrels of oil a day. They took a marginal area and were able to get a well out of the Skinner sand to produce 65 barrels a day. And so what Kim goes on to say, with these modern fracture treatments, we could pump 50,000, 90,000 pounds of sand. So he's talking about what he's going to do, what kind of frac treatment he's going to use for this area. And so fracking, this is not the same as shale fracking. Shale fracking might cost $5 to upwards of $20 million, okay? But when it comes to fracking a smaller well, we're talking maybe $50,000, $100,000 just to do a frac. So it's much simpler. But the thing about fracking, it's an art. You can't just come out and expect, if I could frack a well in Texas, then expect to have the same results in Oklahoma. It's a completely different formula. It's a completely different rhythm. I mean, you can't just expect to know what you're doing. And Kim has extensive knowledge of this area. He has more knowledge in this county than any geologist in the county that I've worked with. I'm very impressed with them. Moving on here. So the opportunity to produce big volumes of oil and gas from the Skinner sand is in finding other areas of slightly shelly but thick in sand deposition up dip from existing Skinner production. I think the Buffalo Ridge prospect is just such a find. So he's taking the success of Emerald Oil and what they already did, and he's essentially summing it up in that way. And so several Skinner sand producers in this area have produced in excess of 30,000 barrels of oil per well. The best well in the area has produced over 100,000 barrels of oil from the Skinner sand alone. So keep in mind, what we've been discussing is that they didn't have today's technology. So if a well can produce 30,000 to 100,000 barrels of oil, imagine what we can do with today's technology. Okay. Now let's say a well produces 50,000 barrels of oil. Okay. Now keep in mind, this is a 3-well package. So let's multiply that times 3. That means we have a potential of 150 to upwards of 300,000 barrels of oil. And that's based on technology back then. Okay. With today's tech, it could be much more, but let's talk about it. Let's just say it does 150,000 out of 3 zones, 150,000 times 30 barrel, $30 oil. That's $4.5 million. Okay. Out of one zone. That's one opportunity out here. We've got multiple opportunities. If we produce 100,000 barrels out of the Skinner, multiply that times 2, that's roughly 9 million. So, scroll down here. There were 3 key wells drilled in the area of interest. The first well, the Willie Hill number 1, was drilled in 1921 by Pulaski Oil in 1921. So the Willie Hill number 1. Okay, so this is our proposed location. these 3 red circles is our proposed location. This is the Willie Hill number 1 right here, okay? If we go back up here, okay, so the Willie Hill number 1 was drilled in 1921, and he talks about the drilling report, and he said this indicates that the sand was 45 feet thick on the western edge of the prospect. So in other words, he was able to look at the log report, and he knows how thick the Skinner structure was based upon what he sees in these wells that have already been drilled. The second well drilled on the primary tract with the estate land number 2 drilled in 57, 60 years ago. The completion report shows that the well was perforated from 2472 and came in at 20 barrels of oil a day. The log shows that the Skinner to be 30 feet thick, so this clearly indicates that the Skinner sand is at least 30 feet thick on the southeastern edge. Okay, so 60 years ago, they drilled this well, and it produced 20 barrels a day out of the Skinner sand. Imagine what we can do with today's technology, okay? Kim believes that they left 70 to 90% of the oil in place, okay? Very easily, we could drill a well next to that, knowing the structure is there, and produce a lot more oil. But we're drilling in virgin area right here, bam, these 3 wells here. And so what he did was he took the information from this well and this well, studied the logs in great length, and he determined where to drill these other 3, okay? Now, of course, he looked at all these wells. And so if we look here, let's see, that was the state land number 2. So they drilled that 60 years ago. A lot has changed in 60 years. Imagine what we could do today. If my mapping is correct, then we should, and I love how much humility he has. He has a 90% success rate in this county, and he's still talking like he has a lot of humility. That's what I love about the guy, because I talked to a lot of geologists over the years, and they come across as the most egotistical, arrogant people you ever meet, and it's a breath of fresh air to work with someone as humble as he is. If my mapping is correct, then we should find between 30 to over 50 feet of Skinner sand on the prospect. That would be unbelievable. Not that unbelievable, we already did in the Llama prospect. I feel that with the development, we can capitalize on the new well data in modern fracturing techniques to maximize the production from each new well drilled on the Buffalo Ridge prospect. Many other potential pay zones lie beneath the Skinner, Pruitt sands, the Red Fork, Bartsville, Gilcrease, Cromwell, and Wilcox. So these are all sands that we have the potential to hit. So each sand could potentially give us 50,000 barrels of oil total. So each sand is a potential. The Red Fork sand, and when I say 50,000, I'm talking about from one well, multiply that times 3, and now you have 150,000. The Red Fork sand is a thin channel sand that meanders across much of northeast Oklahoma. There is a 1 million barrel Red Fork field just a few miles to the east of this prospect. So there's a field that produced 1 million barrels of oil out of the Red Fork alone, just a few miles to the east of us. And see, we've got Gilcrease out here. There are several 30,000 barrel Gilcrease wells in this in the area. 2 Gilcrease wells in northeast section 4. 2, 1. Let's see. So 1 mile from the prospect that produced over 85,000 barrels of oil and over 55 million cubic feet of gas. So just out of the Gilcrease alone, that's pretty big. And keep in mind, today's technology, we could expect more. The Wilcox is a prized target in this area. Individual Wilcox producers are generally the best long-term. So Wilcox wells in the area produce upwards of 100,000 barrels of oil alone. Okay, that would be an additional 300,000 barrels of oil for the prospect. Okay, now let's look here. Let's look at the Wilcox. Okay, so these green, as you can see here, the green indicates Wilcox wells. Okay, if we look here, this well, now the trend, the Wilcox trend moves from here and it gets thicker as we go to the southeast. Now keep in mind, these wells were drilled back in the 70s, and we've got newer tech to help increase the production. But look at this beautiful story, okay? 1972, Wilcox well produced 1 barrel a day. 1970, 20 barrels a day. 88, 29 barrels a day. 1979, 5 barrels. 83, 8 barrels. These are all Wilcox wells, the green. That's one of the many formations we're going after. 1981, 10 barrels a day. 1949, 40 barrels a day. Now, as you can see here, as we go from here down to here, the output increases. 1949, 75 barrels a day. 1946, 115 barrels a day. 1946, 75 barrels a day. 70 barrels of oil. 125 barrels of oil. And so what Kim is telling us, as we go from the north to the southeast, it increases in output. Keep in mind, look at this. 1946, they're able to get a well to produce 115 barrels a day out of the Wilcox alone. Okay, if we produced 115 barrels a day, multiply that times 3. That's 3 wells. That means we're outputting 345 barrels a day. Multiply that times $30 oil. We're not going to be at $30 oil forever, guys. That's $10,000 a day. Multiply that times 30. That's $310,000 a month. That's $3.7 million a year of income from one zone. That's amazing. I mean, if we duplicate the success of what they can do in 1946, that kind of money can be made. Now, there's no guarantees in this business. Yes, we just had 2 successful wells. That doesn't guarantee that we're going to hit every time. Kim Drew has a success rate of 90%. That means 90% of these 3 wells are going to hit if we base it upon those numbers. Okay, so either way, even if we get 2. We're still making a great return potential out here. Now, if you look here, this is the 3 locations, the 3 proposed location. The darker, the red indicates, these dark red indicates, it's called microseepage map. And so what he did was he took microseepage, which you could record with scientific instruments, record the actual microseepage of oil and natural gas seeping through to the surface. Now, with the naked eye, you can never see this. With the naked nose, you cannot smell this, but the instruments have the ability to see it. And it's quite remarkable how the log reports line up with this technology. And so as you can see here, he chose a location based upon well bore location, log reports, geology, engineering, and now he's using microseepage just as another look here to help increase the odds of success. There's a lot more to this thing. I'm not going to go into detail, but if you wish to learn more, feel free to call me anytime. I'd love to chat with you. I'm going to be calling and sending out books very shortly. I hope this makes sense to you guys. I'm really excited about Kim Drew being a part of the team and these recent successes. I'm excited about this field. I'm excited where oil and gas prices are going. I'm excited to see that we're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to oil business, even though that I'm very confident and I know that oil prices are going to come back. And I've been confident for a long time that I first saw the oil and gas industry taking a major blow because of shale. You could know all those things, but it's nice to actually see it. And I'm seeing the news starting to repeat things I've been saying for years. I felt like I was a lone ranger there for a while, but man, this is when it gets really fun, guys. This is exciting. All right, guys. I hope you guys enjoy this. Call me anytime. Thanks.